Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, and I want to also thank the earlier speakers today for setting the context for this kind of very narrow look at this huge, complicated energy system. And I want to put in the context also of the Crystal Ball's presentation about the increase in demand projected by the energy companies over the next 10 years. The distributed energy resources that will contribute to that are kind of small within that context, but they're really important. And one of those areas is, one of the pieces of the distributed energy resources is solar. And I'm going to talk today about one particular aspect of that related to Washington State and its net metering law changes that are occurring related to that, and talk about a specific study. Before I get started, I'm just wondering how many of you in the room are familiar at all with the Washington State Academy of Sciences? Okay, good. I won't spend too much time on that. So, back in 2024, the Washington State Legislature requested that the Washington State Academy of Sciences conduct a study that looks specifically at distributed solar and storage in Washington State. The reason for this is that the governing statute for valuing solar and storage is a net energy metering bill. And that bill, or that law, which was put into effect in 1999, had certain provisions in it related to when that policy could be reconsidered, when certain thresholds were met. And that had to do with peak load going back to 4% of peak load going back to 1996. And certain utilities they knew they were going to surpass this threshold coming up pretty soon. Ultimately, most, if not all, utilities will reach that threshold, which opens the door for them to reconsider what their rate structures are going to be. And so the question was, well, there was a desire to look at methodologies and have input on methodologies that utilities and regulators could look at to get a sense of how to look at rate structures in new ways. So they came to the Washington State Academy of Sciences to conduct an independent study to look at that. And we were established back in 2005 by then Governor Gregoire and the state legislature to serve the Washington State Academy of Sciences I'm talking about, to serve the role that a similar role to what the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine play at the federal level for the state level, which is to provide independent scientific and technological advice to state policymakers. So we were approached and we said yes, and the first phase, it was intended as a two-phase process. The first year was to conduct, to engage stakeholders to learn about their views about this, and also to produce a research plan for year two, and then to submit an interim report to the Utilities and Transportation Commission. So what did we do in our first year? We created an oversight committee. We engaged with interested parties in semi-structured interviews. We designed a research plan, and we prepared the interim report. If you go to this QR code, it's a direct link to the interim report, which was delivered to the state on June 30th. Our oversight committee is 11 members who are senior scientists and engineers, both from Washington State and elsewhere. Many of these, I'm sure, are familiar to most of you in the room. In fact, we have at least one member of the committee in the room with us today, Alan Love. Noel Schultz is also a member of the committee, on John Bose as well. Judd Verdon, who until just about a week ago was one of the associate directors at PNNL, was also a member of the committee. We also are fortunate to have 4 other members on the committee who served on the National Academy of Sciences report that came out in the fall of 2023 on net energy metering. And it's quite remarkable that we were able to get them to volunteer their time to serve on this committee, because they're so steeped on this issue at the national level and across various states, and so that they've been incredibly helpful in giving us advice as part of our oversight committee, and they will continue to do so over the next year. So in year one, we engaged with interested parties by working in conjunction with the William D. Ruckelshaus Center as facilitators of semi-structured interviews with over 23 different interested parties. Some of you are in the room today, and interviewed a total of 48 people. And we produced a summary of those interviews, and these are just the high-level themes that they articulated in these interviews. I won't read them all to you, but I don't think any of these will come as a surprise to you. And there was quite a bit of convergence across the parties, actually, around the importance of distributed solar and storage in helping to meet the state's energy demand expectations over the next decade and beyond. The interested parties also proposed a multi-phased approach to future engagement. They wanted to do many things working collaboratively into the future rather than just as isolated parties, including giving the oversight committee and the project additional input in phase 2, engaging in various workshops and forums, and then over time, longer term time, participate in structured collaboration with each other. Unfortunately, we have limited resources in phase 2 to do all of the things that the interested parties wanted us to do. However, because we really need to focus on the research. However, we are building into phase 2 various touch points, very deliberate touch points along the way in each stage of our activity to engage with them and to receive feedback. If you're interested, a synthesis of all of those interviews that we did is in Appendix E of the interim report that you can access through that QR code, and also the washacad.org website. So the research plan that was developed during that phase 1 was broken into several pieces, lays out the context for the research in Washington State, the key pieces of state legislation and statute that actually drive energy policy in Washington State, including CETA, the Clean Energy Transformation Act, CCA, Climate Commitment Act, and also the HEAL Act, which focuses on a lot on equity. So the objectives of our research are to identify and develop methodologies that can help value the benefits of distributed solar and storage that benefit the people, that the people of Washington State can realize. And these methods can then be made available to inform decisions about policies, rate design, and how to achieve the state's deployment goals for solar and storage that have been set, both by utilities and also the state. The research plan also includes core concepts and research principles about distinctions between what potential benefits could be versus realized benefits, and how the deployment of, there are ways of doing this through deployment benefits, passive benefits, active benefits, and we'll be looking at all of those things in various parts of the research process. We're starting with a list of potential value stack. I'm sure you're all familiar with value stacks of potential benefits, and that list, which is pretty extensive right now, will be reviewed and discussed with interested parties. So that was what we did in terms of phase 1, which was through June 30th. The second phase of the project was funded, again, by the legislature in the last legislative session through a separate bill, and the highlighted language here focuses on developing policy recommendations and options for methodology or methodologies that utility regulators and governing bodies may use. So that's our focus. It's completely consistent with the first phase. It's just a little bit of a narrowing. So here's the timeline for the project over the next 14 months now. Our project is due to the state, in particular the Utilities and Transportation Commission, but also everyone else, on October 1 of 2026. So in stage 1, which we're in the middle of right now, we're finalizing the value stack of categories of potential benefit factors, and along with the potential beneficiaries, who benefits from evaluating the benefit factors in certain ways. The second stage will be focused on mapping those factors to policy mechanisms, policy mechanisms and technical factors as well, so that are needed for the potential benefit to be realized by the beneficiary, as described in stage 1. Stage 3 will look at standard valuation methods that are currently being used, and also begin to identify as appropriate innovative methods for estimating benefits. And then we'll be conducting a similar but more limited approach because of funding on selected areas for potential costs. Then in the spring, we'll be developing some use case scenarios, and then we'll draft the report and deliver it, we hope. Well, we have to deliver it by September 30th, and we're going to finalize the report and give some presentations probably in a year from September. So I want to just thank all who have provided valuable input so far, in particular the great staff at the Washington Department of Commerce. I think Nora Hawkins is in the ether somewhere. I want to thank her in particular. The members of our oversight committee who have been terrific and will continue to give strong oversight and guidance to our work. The Ruckelshaus Center interview team that we worked with, many of you, some of you in the room were part of that. I want to thank them. And then all of those of you who volunteered to be interviewed in phase 1. What we learned from you in that process was critically important. And we look forward to continuing to engage with you in phase 2 to the extent that our resources will allow us to do that. So with that, I'll stop and I think have time for 1 or 2 questions. Please take down this email address. If anyone has any questions about the project moving forward, please feel free to send us.
Thank you for the presentation, then. This is Mani from Washington State University.
Yes, Mani is a member of the WSS.
Thank you. On the 4% threshold, has any of the Washington State utilities already met that threshold, and how are they handling the grandfathering at the moment?
How are they handling what? Pardon?
The grandfathering of existing users who are subscribed to the net metering policy. Are they still honoring the net metering? Okay.
So the policy in Washington State is that, well, the net energy metering statute states that the behind the meter individual solar arrays of certain size will be reimbursed at retail rate. And that rate structure stays in place until it's replaced by something else. There are a few utilities, including Puget Sound Energy, the independent investor-owned utilities that either have already surpassed it or bumping up against passing that threshold now. There are also several public utility districts that already have and have put into place new tariffs. For Opelco is one example. It's a very small rural cooperative, but they have a lot of solar up in their district, and so they surpass the threshold. So they have new tariffs in place that are approved by their governing boards.